what I see a lot with entrepreneurs and just people in general is there are beliefs that you have created about yourself, core beliefs that you have created based on experiences and traumas that you have had throughout your lifetime that have shaped this belief system, whether it's I'm not good enough or I'm going to be a burden or, you know, I am not capable of achieving something. And those negative beliefs get in the way of any type of growth that you can have as a business, because you're constantly either doubting yourself or you're burning yourself to the ground because like you mentioned, you don't give up. So some of those things are internalized as, well, I'm not good enough, because if it's not working, then it must be me.
You're listening to the Black to Business podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Welcome back to another episode of the Black to Business podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today we're going to be discussing how to manage your mental health in business and create work-life balance. Entrepreneurship is like balancing a tipping scale. If one side has too much weight for too long, eventually everything will come crumbling down. As entrepreneurs, we are all too familiar with this, and this is something we often struggle with when it comes to balancing our business and our personal lives. The balance between the two isn't always easy to achieve because the reality is sometimes it seems that our businesses are taking over our lives, and in return, our mental health suffers. So this is why creating clear boundaries are necessary in both your business and personal life. And today we've invited just the right person to help provide a few solutions. Joining me on the show today is therapist, mentor, and entrepreneur Jessica Gaddy Brown. She's breaking boundaries and stigmas in mental health with her own business, and today she's going to assist us and dive into some tips for creating work-life balance and some ways to take care of your mental health so that your business isn't suffering. So let's get into it. So Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited to have you here. So welcome to the Black to Business podcast.
Thank you, Moni. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So what I like to do before we dive into the discussion is let's first talk about who you are, your story, and what is it that you do in your business and how you got started.
Yes, absolutely. So I am a licensed independent clinical social worker based in Washington, D.C. So that's just a fancy title for saying I'm a psychotherapist. I primarily work with Black women and women of color, healing from depression, anxiety, and trauma. I've been in business. Well, I've been in the mental health space for most of my life. I would say about 13 years. But I recently started my private practice 7 months ago. So it's really been a journey, kind of transitioning through the different areas of social work and social services to now actually owning and operating my own business.
Awesome. So that is a perfect time, because one of the things we want to talk about today is mental health in business, because this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. But also the fact that you just transitioned. So I'm sure, you know, some of those growing pains or just startup pains, or how your experience has been. I think that'll be great to talk about. But first, I want to talk about the fact that you do focus on entrepreneurs or people dealing with depression and anxiety, and also healing from their past trauma. So I want to kind of touch on, I know in the Black community, it is not looked upon as people are going to therapy, but right now it is a time where people are more so talking about it. So if you could just talk about what it means to start that therapeutic journey and how important it is for Black people in general, but as an entrepreneur.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a big question. I mean, I think therapy in general for anybody is absolutely critical. But as you mentioned, specifically in the Black community, we have a long history of stigmatization where mental health wasn't necessarily a household term growing up for a lot of us, especially us like millennials and older generations. So it was kind of one of those things where it's either you pray it away or what happens in the family stays in the family, or there's a lot of shame around talking about things that could be really vulnerable. And so being able to access therapy now, for it to be more of a term that's used, thankfully, by social media, the term mental health has really been amplified, but it really creates an opportunity for us to have those opportunities to be vulnerable, to really say, like, I'm not doing okay. I'm struggling with this. It's not, an indication of my ability or my intellect or a character flaw. It just really means that I'm struggling with something emotionally and I need an outside perspective to help guide me through this. So therapy for anyone is absolutely critical. But I think because there's this weight on the Black community of having this strong facade, or we're just supposed to, deal with things independently, there's more emphasis for us to be able to access therapists who are culturally sensitive to help guide us through some of that healing.
Definitely. And that's so true, because also speaking on the fact of, I need help, or people being able to come to terms with the fact that they're not okay and they need help. How do you determine if something is off balance, and whether you should, what measures you should take to resolve this?
Yeah, it's really just tapping into yourself. And I know that sounds very vague. But some of the strategies that I really tell my clients to use is like journaling, right? Being able to talk to yourself every day and ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What are things that are happening around me that could be influencing what I'm experiencing? And how am I dealing with this? And when you are able to journal daily, especially, you're looking at some of these patterns and some of these trends to identify what are triggers in my environment that are making me feel unsettled, that are making me feel unhappy. Is it my work life? Is it my entrepreneurial journey? Is it my relationship? Is it my family? What are things that are happening in my external environment that are affecting me internally? And without being able to track that in an effective way, we have this tendency to just kind of deal with things and move on, and then not really revisit them. So, something can happen on Monday, and by Wednesday we forget. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, it blew over. But what we're not recognizing is that same pattern of behavior continues to manifest in other ways. And it continues to pop up, and it continues to show up in our lives in a very distressing way, because we're ignoring those signs and those symptoms and those triggers that are indications of letting us know, like, hey, this is something that you need to address, right? So being able to kind of tap into yourself and ask yourself some really hard questions and answer them in a very honest way to say, this isn't sitting well with me, or this isn't, it's causing me discomfort. And I need to ask myself, what is really happening here, so that I can actually deal with it and heal from it.
Definitely. So I'm sure a lot of people who are listening are dealing with, maybe they're in a situation now, especially with COVID happening. Things are just a lot more intense for a lot of people. But I really want to talk about that aspect of work-life balance and in entrepreneurship. So what do you think is meant by having a perfect balance in either, people are still working their 9 to 5 and doing their side hustle, or they're just doing their business full time, but they're not taking that time for themselves. So what do you choose a perfect medium for work and life balance?
Oh, okay. So it's hard to say that there's kind of this like perfect or ideal work-life balance, because everyone's priorities are different. And especially where you are in your life at that current time. So being able to really assess and identify the capacity that you have to manage all of your different priorities is the first critical thing. You have to identify, the growth of my business right now, is that the most important thing to me? Or is it spending time with my family? Because maybe I have a newborn, or maybe, you know, I want to spend more time with my spouse or other priorities. So I think the first thing is really identifying what is that priority for you at this particular moment in your life, at this juncture, and then being able to frame all the other responsibilities around that. And to me, that's really kind of like the crux of what work-life balance is being able to create capacity around your priorities. So the first thing I would say is do a full assessment of everything in your life. I tend to use the 8 dimensions of wellness as my guide of what areas I need to focus on. So the eight dimensions of wellness include like your mental, emotional health, your physical health, spiritual health, financial health, occupational health, like your career, your social relationships, your environment, and your intellectual. So like continual learning and self-development. And so I frame kind of my priorities around that. Like, what areas do I want to focus on over the next 30 to 60 days of my life right now? If it's me feeling like I'm a little burnt out right now, which is, true story, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm noticing, okay, I put 120% into my business over the last few months, and it's starting to wear on me. So I'm noticing that my mental and emotional well-being right now is pretty low. So that is my priority at this particular juncture in my life. And what does that look like for me? That looks like ensuring I get a workout in every day, or I'm getting some type of movement. That looks like making sure I'm getting my regular therapy appointments. Looks like making time for my friends and socialization, because that fills me up. And how I frame my career and my work is around that priority. So maybe I'm seeing less clients, because I want to have my weekends free so that I can do some of these other things for myself. Maybe that looks like seeing clients later in the day so that I'm able to work out in the morning and have that time with myself before I really jump into my day. That could look like me taking Fridays off so that I have a full day to kind of recuperate and refill myself. So that's how I've kind of constructed my own work-life balance in my personal life, by identifying what are my priorities at this particular moment and being able to shape everything else around that. Now, of course, our priorities shift and things change. If one day me and my husband decide to have a family, then of course that will be my priority. And how does everything else kind of shift and move to make that the center of, my balance right now? So I would say for those who are struggling with creating that sense of work-life balance, is to really look at what is your priority, and then being able to shape everything else around that makes sense. So I know there's a lot of people who are, doing their 9 to 5 and then getting home and being, entrepreneurs at night and doing their side hustle. And maybe they also have a family. Mm-hmm. And so, even in that question, what does it look like? What do your priorities look like right now? Does it look like maybe grinding in your business so that you can launch that and leave your 9 to 5 and then have more time available with your family? So how do you construct a schedule and some type of structure that puts that in the forefront so that everything else can still get touched on, but maybe doesn't have as much emphasis? Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And things that show up for me when you were just saying that is like, the things that stuck out is it sounds like preparation. And then also, I know people are probably wondering like, okay, I know I am a person that's always like, I have to take care of myself before I can take care of others. So my business, but it's also people who may be listening and thinking, okay, I know I need to step back and take care of myself, but will that be at the detriment of my business? And what does that look like? Like, I'm going to sacrifice. Yeah, I can scale back on clients, but can I afford to do that? And the mental toll that may take on someone by choosing themselves, but at the same time, their business that provides that food on the table is, they're sacrificing that. So dealing with, I guess, preparation and delegation, and then the mental toll. So I think it's like a double-edged sword at the same time. So how would someone deal with that?
Let me first say, if you aren't taking care of yourself, you won't have a business to worry about, right? I'm speaking from experience at this point. Even as a therapist, I'm still human. So I still struggle with having this like ideal work-life balance. And so when I first went into my business, I was taking on all the clients, trying to accommodate everyone that came onto my waiting list. And it was a lot. I was seeing sometimes 6, 7, 8 clients back to back in a day. And I would have like 5 to 10 minutes to like run to the bathroom, eat, feed my dog, be a wife in between clients. And it was just unsustainable. And it got to the point where I was canceling sessions because I mentally could not take it. I couldn't show up for other people and not show up for myself first. And so that's when I had to realize and be honest with myself and say, you know what, Jessica, if you continue to go at this pace, trying to be, money hungry or this hustle mentality and teen no sleep and do, all of these things that social media tell you that you're supposed to do as an entrepreneur, you aren't going to be you won't have any capacity to show up for anyone. And when you get that far into burnout, there is sometimes no recovery. Like you're just mentally so checked out of this business that it's hard for you to bounce back from that. And I noticed myself kind of teetering into that space. And I'm like, it's a temporary sacrifice that I have to make to say, I'm not taking on any more clients because I can't handle it. I need to take care of myself first. So if that looks like me going from 8 clients a day to 3, then that's what I have to do. And whatever income I derive from that, I'm going to have to make it work for a temporary period of time or figure out how I can replace that income while still maintaining my sanity. So maybe that looks like scaling. And that looks like delegating. So I'm at the point in my career where I'm bringing people on board. I'm hiring contractors. I'm hiring employees to say, hey, I have all of these clients that I can't take. So come work for me, come work with me. And then you can see these clients and then I'm getting a percentage of that to go towards my business.
Yeah.
And so it's important to recognize that you don't have a profitable and really sustainable business if it's solely dependent on you. Because if something happens to you and you're out for, a week, God forbid I go out and I break my ankle and I'm on bed rest and I can't see clients or whatever the case may be. Even we just had COVID, right? Like what if I contracted COVID and I couldn't see clients for 2 weeks? I don't have a sustainable business if I can't ask someone else to say, hey, can you step up for me and see clients while we still generate income and I'm not actively putting into my business. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And even you saying that is like prepping for COVID, because I'm pretty sure people who have been affected by it in their business, one of the things at Black to Business that we encourage is, like you said, scaling and being able to scale in order to delegate and what that does for someone's mental capacity in terms of, being a business owner, as well as being able to launch or manage their lifestyle. But what have you seen, because I'm sure you've worked with clients, that this has been able to do for them personally, for you personally, as well as like your clients, being able to take off some of those things and having that mindset that we are going to scale because this alleviates some of the tasks. So have you had experience with, people who've been able to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the first thing to look into as you transition into entrepreneurship is a VA, right? A virtual assistant. Getting someone to just simply answer your phone calls or respond to emails or, help with scheduling, life-changing, right? If that's one less thing that you can take off of your plate and not have to worry about, it's worth the investment. Even before I fully went into my private practice, I started looking at assistants because I already knew coming into it what I did and didn't want to do. I knew that I didn't want to do billing, and I knew that I didn't want to do like the intake, like, fielding potential clients, looking at their paperwork, running their insurance. That takes too much energy out of me. And if I got to expend my energy somewhere else, it's going to take away from me being present with my client and giving 110% to my client. So I had to make the conscious decision to say, this is going to cost me a certain amount, but I'm already putting this into my business expenses. So I'm already operating with that in mind, that I have, it's almost like another employee to me. And when I tell you that was light years of a difference in my business, just being able to focus on what I am damn good at, which is showing up for my clients and being present for my clients, it's priceless. It's priceless. Me not having to respond to the emails, me not having to pick up my phone, me not having to worry about insurance claims getting denied and having to do that whole rigmarole. It just alleviates so much pressure and so much work. So it opens up a lot more capacity for me to really show up and do the things that I'm interested in doing, which helps reduce that burnout and that fatigue.
Yes. And as you're saying that, I'm nodding my head like, yes, I can think of like when I got my VA, my virtual assistant, and some of the things that she was able to take off my plate. I was like operating in chaos, and it felt like I didn't know how to not be in chaos. So it's like, wait, I don't have to do anything right now. That's already done. Like, it just feels so good. And it took me some time to get even used to that. It's already done. Mm-hmm. So
right. It's like you go from operating in like the survival mode. Like, I'm just float to like, okay, now I can actually enjoy the swim.
Yes. And Jessica, what about, say you are an entrepreneur and you decided to, operate in this fact that I'm going to have this work-life balance. Let's talk about the importance of communication and those around you understanding this journey. So how are you being able to get them on board with the balance, whether it be your family or whether it be those in your team who are not used to you prioritizing this?
Ooh, boundaries. That is my favorite word. And that is the season that I am in. Like, I can't be everything to everybody, and I can't be everywhere. So if I have to say no to things because I have to prioritize, my priority at that moment, then that's what I have to do. And that communication could look like, so my husband is very social. He is a night owl. His business is, networking and communicating with like nightlife and businesses. So there's times when he wants me to go out with him, and I got to say, I can't make that right now because I have work that I need to catch up on, or I have other priorities that I need to do. But let's arrange for a time, maybe in a week when my schedule slows down, and we can put that on the schedule and something that we can plan for. Mm-hmm. But it requires me having to say no a lot. It requires me to kind of be that friend that doesn't show up to the parties or doesn't show up to the happy hour. But that's okay, because I'm telling myself, okay, I have to make certain concessions at this point in time, and they're temporary, but know that like I can show up for you in other ways. I just can't show up for you physically at this particular moment or emotionally at this particular moment because of what else I have going on. That takes precedence. So something that me and my friends also do, we rely on each other kind of emotionally, and we go through stuff. So, you want to have that girl time, you want to kiki, you want to talk. We've gotten into the habit of asking each other for permission first. Like, hey, do you have the capacity to take this on right now? Because I need to vent. and not getting offended when someone says no. So if I ask my girlfriend, like I'm going through it right now. Like, do you have a moment for me to just vent? And she says no. Okay, well, let's set up, maybe we can have happy hour in a couple weeks when things slow down, and then we can catch up then. Or vice versa. If she comes to me, hey, I have a project that I'm working on. I have a deadline. Let me get back to you with some times that we can catch up on this.
I love that, because there are so many times where people, you have your own chaos going on, and it's like it's not that you don't want to be there. It's just like, I can't take on anything else right now. And asking for that permission, I like that. So that's something I'm going to practice myself. So I like that.
Absolutely. And the reinforcement of that boundary is also really important, because some people want to test that, especially like clients or people that you're working with. They want to see how much flexibility you have in your boundaries. And if you allow your boundaries to be porous and flexible, people will take advantage of that. So having to double down and say, no, I really can't make that. And I would appreciate if you respected this boundary for me. I'll let you know when I can get back to you on that. Or, if you continually disrupt this boundary that I have, we have to reevaluate our relationship because it's not healthy.
I like it. And what about, speaking to the balance when it comes to the work culture? Because like you, I'm sure there are others who are listening who have a team that they're managing, and just being able to be a good leader. But how do you make sure that you create that culture in the work environment and with your team to, take care of themselves, but also have that balance and those boundaries for, your team reaching out to you or saying that something is not right within themselves, being able to create that good environment?
Lead by example. Mm-hmm. People will follow suit. They'll follow your lead. If they recognize, I actually have a client who I'm working on this with. If you say that you don't answer emails after 5, you have to adhere to that. And allow you and communicate that with your team. I don't answer emails after 5, but I will get back to you first thing in the morning. Or if you email me or give me a call, just know that I'm not going to respond to it until the morning. And be very clear about that. And allow them to also assert their own boundaries. Ask them what they need. If they need one day, work from home instead of being in the office, because that helps them with work-life balance. That helps them feel a little bit more, stress-free, then maybe see how that can be an accommodation for them. Coming out of COVID, there's going to be a really challenging adjustment that people are going to be experiencing from working from home and getting comfortable to now having to go back into the office. So if you can assist your employees and your team with that transition, maybe that looks like 2 days in the office instead of, abrupt 5. Maybe that looks like you every other week, you can leave an hour early. Just talking with your team, communicating with them to see what is it that you guys need that would help you feel more balanced, that will help you feel happier at work. Because when you have happy employees, you have higher productivity.
Yes.
And you have higher retention. People aren't going to be likely to leave because they feel appreciated. They feel heard. And so when you tap into your team and ask them, what is it that you need and how can we make this, accommodation, you will have a significantly happier and healthier team.
Love it. And I agree, because people just want to feel like you care. Absolutely. And then also they're not just there to meet the bottom line, just a number. So yes. Agreed.
Absolutely. When I worked at my last corporate job, one of my questions in the interview was, how do you guys handle workplace wellness? And what are you guys doing to ensure employee wellness? And so, of course, they talked about, we're very flexible with work-life balance, and you can work from home and do all these different things. We have a gym downstairs and blah, 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 blah. But then when it came to actually implementing that, I got denied for my day, work from home.
Wow.
So to me, it's like, okay, it sounded good, but implementation wasn't there. And so now I'm not feeling heard, I'm not feeling valued, and I'm getting burnt out.
Yeah.
So I gotta go.
Yes, I agree. And that makes me think about when one of my assistants, she came on board and she told me about her past experience at the workplace. And she said, every time before we meet, you ask me how I'm doing. Like, you really ask me how I'm doing. And I it's just normal. And just to see the impact that had, but just asking someone how they're doing and how they're feeling really matters.
Absolutely. We're human. We thrive on connection. And when people extend us empathy, it almost feels validating for what we are experiencing. And validation feels good. Validation feels nice. So when you tap in and check in with your team, or even when people check in with you, it makes you feel seen. It makes you feel like I'm not just here to be a workhorse, like I'm actually a human that they care about.
Yes, agreed. And so before I get into the question of identifying, programs and platforms that could support entrepreneurs and business owners during this process, I want to first talk about something that you're doing to help people. And let's talk about Noire's Wellness Series. What's that about?
So Noire's Wellness Series was created. It's actually funny. We started in 2016 when Noire first was born, I guess. It started off as like a sister circle just to kind of create conversation around mental health and mental illness. And when we started in 2016, the word mental health was nothing like it is today. People were still, hesitant to talk about it. It was still kind of like this hush-hush word. And so it was just a really beautiful conversation between me and some of my girlfriends just about what we experience on a day-to-day. Funny enough, after we had filmed that, we lost all the footage. So,
what?
So it was actually ironic because we're talking openly about mental illness, and that event like sent me into a downward spiral of depression. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this cannot be real. So after several years, my friend encouraged me to kind of get back into it because these conversations are necessary. So the resurgence of the Wellness Series started last year, and it really seeks to amplify the voices of Black people and people of color, sharing their stories of vulnerability, resilience, and wellness. So we focus on just entrepreneurs, business owners, C-suite level executives, and just everyday people who are just killing it, right? Who are just killing it at life and doing really amazing things, but really understanding what is behind all of that. What is the journey like to get to where you are now? And some of the people that we've interviewed, they are still on their wellness journey. They can be, never had experienced therapy before in their life. And that was actually one of my favorite interviews was with one of my friends who had never experienced therapy. And she was kind of on the fence about experiencing therapy. And you could see in the interview, she didn't have a lot of insight or understanding about mental health. But then after that interview, she's like, hey, I really want to start therapy. And I'm like, this is what the Wellness Series is about, is really helping facilitate those conversations, looking at other people's journeys of where they've come from and helping move people into a place of wanting to seek support or just have vulnerable conversations about mental health and wellness. So it's been a really, really beautiful process. We've had some really incredible guests so far, between people that I've known personally who have really amazing businesses and, digital programs, to we actually have some episodes coming out later this month with some celebrities. So it's really exciting to just kind of see the growth, but see the human behind these like really flashy Instagram pages with, verified Instagram pages and these really successful businesses, but to see the human like who they really are behind all of this success, to see their breakthroughs and their breaking points, and to just really humanize them it's been so beautiful.
I love that. And I think it's so true, like being vulnerable. I think it has a lot to do with honestly being a great leader also, because just sharing my personal story is I started therapy this year, and I wish I would have. I'm like, why didn't I not start this so long ago? And I remember one of my close friends, she went for her birthday. I'm like, what did you do for your birthday? And she was like, I went to my therapy session. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that.
Yes.
And I just see a lot of things show up, in my session, just sharing how, just sharing a little bit. A therapist said, one of the things is you've learned from your childhood is like to never give up. Like you don't know how to let go. And I see a lot of that show up in business and opportunities. So it's great to like see the root of those things, which was so eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you about, I'm sure like with the series and also dealing with clients, how past trauma affects your work and your ability to lead. I want to talk about that and what you've seen and how it is true.
Absolutely. So it's funny because I'm actually like working on a program to address just this issue, because what I see a lot with entrepreneurs and just people in general is there are beliefs that you have created about yourself, core beliefs that you have created based on experiences and traumas that you have had throughout your lifetime that have shaped this belief system, whether it's I'm not good enough, or I'm going to be a burden, or, I am not capable of achieving something. And those negative beliefs get in the way of any type of growth that you can have as a business, because you're constantly either doubting yourself or you're burning yourself to the ground because like you mentioned, you don't give up. So some of those things are internalized as, well, I'm not good enough, because if it's not working, then it must be me. And so I see that so much with, especially like I work with a lot of women. So I see that a lot with women where we just internalize all of these like speed bumps, these bumps in the road as internalized failures. Like it must be a me thing because I'm not capable of doing this and I'm not good enough to do this. And so my work has really consisted of digging into some of those traumas, digging into some of those experiences, digging into how you were raised as a child that have cultivated and created those belief systems. And then how do we break that mindset to get you on a path of a growth mindset, seeing obstacles as now opportunities instead of failure.
I love that. I love it. So if you could give someone who's listening, who's dealing with these things, some advice on, how to deal or how do we fix this? Just a quick thing that they could do to work on daily. I know you mentioned journaling. Any other advice that you would have for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think checking your belief system, understanding what are the stories, the negative stories that you are telling yourself that are getting in the way of your success, and creating boundaries. We as people struggle quite a bit with boundaries because of guilt or shame of letting people down, but we don't recognize how poor boundaries really affect us in our businesses and just as in our individual peace. So being able to recognize those two things, what are my belief systems? What boundaries do I need to put into place? And then boundaries around your work-life balance and your priorities so that you can cancel out anything that doesn't fit with what your goal is, and then make room for opportunity to pour into some of those priorities.
Love it. And any advice, or how do you know when to pause and determine when you have reached burnout, and what should you do?
So regularly check in with yourself. Again, like asking yourself those questions. I always ask myself 3 questions. What is happening? What am I experiencing and feeling? And why? Getting to the root of that why, because oftentimes we're not reacting to things that are directly happening in the situation. We're reacting to our emotional response to it. And so checking yourself to say, okay, what is actually happening in this moment? Am I feeling ashamed? And so I'm going to project it as being angry at another person. And checking yourself in those moments to say, okay, this is a pattern that I'm displaying. And I need to get to the root of this pattern so that I can have more balance and like mental stability or like mental calm in my life so that I can handle other issues that are more pressing or more prominent. So asking yourself those 3 questions as situations come up kind of help you keep track of trends and patterns and behaviors, as well as the journaling to kind of help you keep track of kind of ebbs and flows in your behavior. And as women, you know, our behaviors and our moods tend to fluctuate, especially like around our menstrual cycle. So for me, it's really helpful to understand and assess, you know, hey, I've been feeling really low and unmotivated lately. I've been really fatigued and really tired, and I just haven't felt like doing my normal, you know, self-care, my normal daily, kind of my daily check-ins with myself, like working out, having my morning routine. I just haven't felt like doing that. So that's an opportunity for me to kind of look at my go-tos. Let me look at my health app and see, okay, is this around that time of the month? Let me give myself a little bit more extra rest because I understand what I'm experiencing right now. Let me be a little bit more compassionate to myself because I know that I don't have all the energy and my body is asking me for something else right now. So when you have that understanding of how your body operates on a physical level, and then checking in with yourself on an internal mental and emotional level, you could really set boundaries and coping skills to really support you during that time. So that requires a lot of insight and tapping into yourself. But as an entrepreneur, it's absolutely necessary so that you can stay on top of your game.
Definitely. I like that, and being kind to ourselves. I like that. One of the things I hear you say is like journaling. I really have to get more into journaling. Sometimes I do it when I feel like it, but I think it should definitely be a practice. Mm-hmm. So
right. And what's helpful is finding like journals with prompts, because then it takes the guesswork out of, you know, you having to find a prompt or you not knowing what to journal about. It really takes all of that guesswork out of it. So if you're able to find a prompted journal, and there's a few people that have them, like Zenit, Zenit is one that has a really good prompted journal. The therapy journal from Her Therapy Space is really great. And there's a few out there that offer different prompts to help you through kind of like the daily journaling process.
Definitely writing those down to mention them in the resources. So, thank you. So, Jessica, this has been such value-packed conversation. I want to ask you, so if I was someone that was interested in connecting or working with you,
the process of working with me, or how to get in touch to work with me?
The process of working with you, and how could you help me? And then also, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say working with me is kind of a hybrid between therapy and coaching. So in the therapy sense, I really try to get to the core of what you're thinking and experiencing and where the roots and legs of that is coming from. So I tell my clients, you know, I'm going to ask you some questions about your childhood. I'm going to ask you some questions about your parents. I'm going to ask you some hard questions about, you know, traumas and things that you've experienced, so I can get some context of where your thought process is coming from and how these beliefs were developed. And then we do some kind of coaching strategies of, okay, let's create some, after identifying what your goals are, let's create some measurable and objective targets to achieving what it is that you want to achieve in your life, even from a wellness level. If it sounds like you want to talk more positively to yourself, okay, let's create a goal around that. And I'm helping you and guiding you to achieve that. Mm-hmm. And I kind of use this analogy, it's probably a little silly, but I tell my clients, we are on this road trip and it's a wellness journey. You are always in the driver's seat and I'm holding the GPS. So I'm going at your pace. We're going where you want to go. I can give you directions and I can guide you, but ultimately you're in control.
I like that, actually.
Thanks. They respond well to that. So I guess it's not so silly.
Not silly at all. And how can people connect with you?
Absolutely. So you can always reach me directly via email. My direct email is jessica@Noire. Or you can follow me on all social media outlets. My personal is at Jessica Gaddy Brown. And then my practice, Nia Noire, is at Nia Noire. And that's NIANOIRE.
Perfect. So I like to always ask my guests what favorite tools or resources that you've used, because I know you just transitioned, that in your entrepreneurial journey. So any favorite tools or resources that you're loving?
Oh, so this is a shameless plug, but on my website, I have a free daily to-do list. And I love using that because it starts your day off with gratitude and appreciation and kind of goal setting. And then it has a to-do list, but it has your 3 top priorities. So the way that I use this list is I write down everything I need to do for the day. But as long as I get those top 3 priorities done, then I'll be okay. I'm giving myself compassion for all the other things that I wasn't able to accomplish. But then some of those become my daily priorities for the next day and the next day and the next day. So I love that tool because it allows you to really just focus on a few things at a time, but expressing gratitude for everything else that you have going on in your life and things that you are just crushing it and killing it at. Because I don't think we give ourselves enough praise.
We don't.
So that is actually, if you go to my social media and you go to the links, it's available. And then I also have a pre-therapy prep guide on my website that's free. And I use that with clients to kind of help them identify what are their primary goals. How do they envision their life in the next few years? And what are some words that they want to kind of step into and live by, and create a kind of a mantra for yourself. So I love using that before therapy because it kind of gives you a guide of how to step into therapy and what you want to work on with your therapist. So that's a really fun tool that I love to use. Books. I'm sorry, I'm giving a lot, but books that have been really helpful for me on my entrepreneurial journey. I absolutely love the books, Set Boundaries and Find Peace by Nidra Tawwab. So that has been a pivotal book for me in my own personal life. And I also use it with clients, and just helping set boundaries between work, family, friends, social media, different outlets to just help you kind of protect yourself first and protect your peace, and then kind of silence the noise of everything around you.
Love it. And I do want to ask, because I know you're new to the transition, 7 months, anything that you would like to share with the listeners about your loving about this new life and that you wish you would have known before starting this new journey?
Ooh, there's so much. I mean, it's been a beautiful journey so far. And despite kind of the low points and doubting myself throughout the process, my main advice is really trust the journey. I know a lot of times we kind of see the end goal and we see what we want, and we feel this strong conviction knowing that it's possible, but we get impatient and we want to kind of jump the process and take shortcuts to try to get to that end goal. But really the beauty in this entrepreneurial journey is that it's just that, it's a journey, and you have to experience all of those, highs and lows to really appreciate the end goal when you receive it. So trust the process, trust the journey, enjoy the ride, and document it, because you want to be able to look back and see how far you've come.
I love it. And that's a good note to end on. So Jessica, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. And we so appreciate you for being here. So
thank you so much for having me. It was a joy to talk to you.
We really unpacked so much within this episode, and I hope that you also found this information useful. What really struck with me is that sometimes we can think that things are a quick fix when it's really so much deeper. Deeper meaning how we grew up or how certain events in our lives have shaped our thinking, and we're not even aware. If you're a business owner or you're on your way to launching your own business, I challenge you to do the deep work. And by deep work, I mean work on those limiting beliefs. Work on the root of those areas for you as a leader that are opportunity areas. But most importantly, work on taking care of yourselves. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to check out blacktobusiness.com/46 for complete show notes and resources mentioned during this episode. We would also be grateful if you could rate and review this episode and our show to let us know how helpful this information has been for you. Until next time.